Sector.
My tomato plants are there for rain.
Have any green tomatoes on your plants yet? Or did you just
No,
plant
not
them?
this time. Well, I got two this fall. I bought them a little bit taller. They got blooms on them. I'm late getting it done this year.
Me too. Finally got some pepper plants planted, had some tomatoes planted.
Call the recess meeting to order from June 11th. As always, we'll start off the invocation. If you would stand with us up do the invocation. Our gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, just thank you for getting us up this morning, just protecting us on the way here. And Lord, just ask you to go be with us through our trials and everything else. Lord, we know that you are guiding our way. We know that you are in charge. And Lord, just ask you now, just be with us as we leave the business here in the county. And Lord, just be with us on our way home. Be with our families and keep them safe in our absence. Lord, we ask you for forgiveness before we fail you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Please continue to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'll have some budget deliberations and information from our Finance Director, Julie Edwards.
We emailed you, or Shannon emailed you yesterday, and I put at your location, because I didn't know if it was printed or not, just the summary revenue expenditure, the sheet telling you what we did, what we've done, the reclasses of the two listed, the new positions, 4% COLA, part-time, paying time and a half, true time and a half for EMS communications. I took $100,000 from the health department Title 19 funds, school 285, 4% fund, school/FTech fund, $285,000. Cap reserve, I took away $300,000 from the economic development, and SRO part-time in the sheriff's department, and took $50,000 from economic development professional services. I left in the unit 6 ambulance. That's something y'all can discuss. We're financing it just because Brandon, had said it would take 9 to 10 months to get it. I didn't know if y'all want to just go ahead and leave it in there in the financing or take it out as, like I said, and then I added the rollback and took it away from the $770,000 in capital projects. And then did not transfer $200,000 to capital reserve for public buildings. And then we did various budget adjustments in different departments. And I got the school maintaining them at $13,033,003. That would require $789,250 from general fund, or 2.3% tax transfer from general fund to that fund. Capital outlay $1,780,000. Using fund balance $4,276,016, which would be 25.10%. Excuse me. And then I put a salary and equipment. You print out for that to your location. Also, you wasn't here, Mr. Nicholson. I've also put at your location. I seen Jason Perry this morning, and I asked him about the referendum for 4%, and I put that his answer, and we marked the third, the earliest we could do it, and some question and answers off the association website.
What's the third
2020. That's just information on it. And then I also put a sheet that looks like this. This is what is in capital reserve at this time for each department. And on public buildings, I kind of put over there what we just taken out, so you can see what would be left. Information. And then also this to-do list, location of those 29 things, and what has been done at the time with those items. Any questions?
So due to the fact that in November, just the municipal election, and countywide election, 4 cent sales tax could not be put on at that time. It has to wait until the countywide election, and the first one is March 3rd.
Correct, that's correct.
I think we got a lot through there, but. Do we need to make it, know what we want to do? Actually, do we want to just wait on that? How about that we're doing right now?
I'd like to proceed with it as quickly as possible, but I want it to be a successful one and be sure to get the word out on what this is for, instead of being rushed and not many people find out and say, well, of course, I ain't gonna vote for no kind of tax increase on that. But, you know, have we got time to get the word out to get these people to understand? That's my biggest concern.
I want it to be in a general election, not a primary.
So you have more people turn out.
You could always use it to pay back money that we had put against the requirement.
I'd like to see it go quick. I kind of lean with him, because with the primary, we seen how the last primary turned out.
And I understand what Rick's saying, I certainly understand it fully, and but I will say this. It was put on the 2016, the last thing that was added to the ballot, 2016. Because that's when Commissioner Walker and I ran.
Mm-hmm.
In November, when President Trump was on the ballot against Ms. Clinton. And we had a huge turnout for that election, huge turnout in Stokes County. And it was what we had on that ballot, in addition to the people, it was defeated 80-20. Now, I talked to several people, and they just felt like we didn't do the commissioners, which I was running, so I wasn't commissioner at the time. Commissioner Walker was the commissioner, he was running, but at the same time I was. As soon as I got on, I got a lot of feedback that it was a poor job done of getting the word out to the people about what it actually was concerning, and that we did not do, well, not us, but just the word was not got out enough. Commissioner Walker, is that
I agree, and I can give you a very recent example of it. If you remember when the superintendent was here, and we were having a joint meeting, at some point, he mentioned that he went to the polls to vote, saw that on the ballot, had no clue what it was. Yes.
Well, I could say the same thing. I actually remember sitting on there and I voted no. Really didn't know what it was myself.
I don't know which one it would do the best in, maybe do better with a smaller turnout, I don't know. It really depends on how you market it, probably more.
I don't want to say this in a bragging way. I don't like to brag anyway, but I need to use what they taught me in the University of North Carolina, which I'm a fellow of the Institute of Political Leadership of the University of North Carolina, worked hard to get that. And they told us what you just said, Mr. Morris, if you want to have more influence on the outcome of an election, you may want to go for the one with a smaller turnout, because if you can get your people out there, they will have a proportionally larger effect on the outcome in a smaller election than a larger one. Because if everybody's coming to vote for Donald Trump in the next election, a lot of folks here in Stokes County, then whatever amount that are coming to really support the proposed quarter-cent sales tax will not proportionally be as large as it would be in a smaller election.
Well,
But anyway, we have some time either way.
We can research, we can approve it
And,
and research when we want to do it.
Right, there does seem to be, I don't think I've heard everyone actually state their position on it, but there does seem to be support throughout our board, various board members for at least considering it.
I'd rather see something like it than a property tax increase.
Oh,
to tell you the truth.
yeah, it's much less
And I think
regressive.
if,
The property tax is a very regressive tax.
Yes. And plus, everybody, well, I say everybody pays that fair share. I mean, you can have people outside the county paying that part too, so.
Right, exactly.
Like I said, also, when you, there's some question and answers from the association site, it talks about, you know, what you can use it for, really anything, if you have to specify. And then when you can get your money and, you know, start collecting it and all that, that was just, I thought that would be some information for you.
Thank you for doing this.
And if y'all have something to talk about, go ahead. I'm just gonna take a few minutes, go over some of this, stuff myself here.
County manager, what's your, does you look back over this with Julia, Shannon, what's your feelings on, let's see,
We sit in there pretty much all day long, going over and revising from certain areas, and it's basically based on what this board wanted in there anyway. And we try to come up with the numbers and making the numbers work. I think now that you've got somewhere pretty close of what this board is asking for, in salaries and equipment, and your capital projects, and currently with your schools, I think the 13 million does have the 2 social workers in it, correct?
Yes.
Should.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
120.
It does, it does, because if it didn't, then it would go back to 12.9 that we originally had in there.
Does
This
it have,
puts the 2 social workers in there because this board's consensus was to have them, so.
Doesn't have the other 60K.
yeah, that's what my
does not have
question was
the other
gonna be.
60K.
Does that have the other what?
60,000 for books and supplies.
Oh, okay.
But we did cut back on some of the departments is in there, and Joe, you can go over that with you if you need to talk, but we was needing to balance some of the numbers in that, and get this to where this board says, okay, this is what we are leaning towards, now, here's the final numbers on that. So I think it's something that will work. It's keeping you at 25% on your fund balance. It's also funding your schools, and it's funding the county, doing some projects that you would like to do, and moving the county forward the best we possibly can with what we got. She's also left the 6th ambulance in there that you was talking about. It doesn't affect the budget that much anyway right now, because it's being financed. I told Brandon Gentry EMS director that, Julia and I were thinking about doing this, and, we was gonna present this to the board to see what they thought. But the personnel was not there. It was just making, we're gonna do the finance, just take care of it all at one time and have it ready for, to hit the ground running at the next budget, instead of sitting here waiting on an ambulance. And if it comes up to where you need a backup because something broke down,
Yeah.
you could possibly go back to it and use it.
Has anyone looked at the call response times for our 911 units?
Call response, as far as how many they,
I think the time it takes from the call comes in till the unit arrives on the scene.
well, now, I'd have to get that information from Mr. Gentry on that.
Because I'm getting no complaints. I haven't had a complaint about EMS. Can't remember when the last one was, actually.
The only complaint that I have ever heard from was when we were short an ambulance, because they were all out of the county,
Out of the county.
and Lifestar had to come in and do it.
But they're set up to do that if necessary, aren't
If
they?
necessary, but it took them a long time to get there.
Right.
And made my house pretty quick.
I guess they picked me up pretty quick and that's right up the road.
Depends though, they don't get there quick all the time.
Yeah. I
I
don't,
mean, when they're busy and they've got long distances to travel, they get dispatched quickly.
right.
Because we fixed that front end of it a couple of years ago with Dr. Nelson, but it's kind of hit and miss about how long it's gonna take them to get there.
And we do have the supervisor's unit that's equipped to respond also, I believe.
Yeah.
Going in that direction, though, I think, as you say, depending on where we're at, is that both times I had my 2 heart attacks, they were there, first time it took them 6 minutes, second time was 5.
Well,
That's good.
That's
can't
great.
improve much on that.
That's great.
That's probably the only reason I'm still here, to be honest.
But
I actually used to, and we're going back a ways. I used to get some complaints about our EMS service. But then I think we started doing better, like Commissioner Morris says, we work some on the front end and we have them rather nicely located throughout the county, it seems, and so, if not,
They have to be dispatched in 90 seconds from the time that the 911 call comes in. But then after that, if they're driving long distances, they can get stretched out a little bit.
and some of our, I've noticed that some of our fire departments have these units that look like ambulances. And they get on the scene sometimes quicker than our units.
That's your first response,
Yeah, and they're pretty well equipped and pretty well trained.
rescue units.
It all kind of depends on where your call comes from and where they happen to be.
Or
when the call
and
comes
whether they
in.
have that unit or not.
Mhm.
They're volunteers, so.
Yeah.
So I guess we need the question answers. Do y'all want to leave in that ambulance or take it out?
What you said here, I don't see a problem with leaving it in.
I left it in, but it's because it's finance, but I didn't know how the board felt.
I would probably leave it in since it's fine.
It's finance. It don't come out in fund balance because it's finance.
If we have another one put into the rotation, current rotation, it's less wear and tear on the existing vehicles. And it's gonna last a few years whenever we buy it.
It could also act as a backup if one was down
Yes,
or a wreck or something like that had happened until, and that way it would be here once that station's finished.
I'm in favor of leaving it.
Okay.
Have a majority already, but I'm certainly in favor of leaving it.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know how you want to proceed. I've got a position on every item we've discussed. I can go through and then let you guys comment on it.
If you want to, go ahead. I'm still sitting there reading, trying to get caught up myself here, because
Okay.
with everything going on this past week, I ain't had much time to.
I'll just give you guys a complete summary of my position on, I think, everything we've discussed and some things we haven't as well. And, if you want to vote on something as we go, we can, or we can come back to it, I guess. Get tired of listening to me, you can switch to somebody. On my position on the school budget, still where it was at, with keeping that extra 60 in there, which is be 188,370 for the discretionary items. And then the manager's recommendation on the capital and the, it sounds like we don't need to do anything with the fund balance, because if you leave the capital like it is, that's 100,000, and she said she had 100, and projected 100 and what?
Where am I gonna get this extra 60 from?
We'll figure that out later. I got some suggestions on
I
that.
mean, I got a little bit I found today, but
Okay.
not 60.
But we, on the fund balance, she's got how much already, she said, projected? School fund balance.
197 was her.
180 is what she told me, she had estimated through June 30th of 19.
So she'll have 180 plus 100 that we have in capital, right? That first line in the capital budget.
That's not part of her current expense.
I know it's not, but you add the two together, they're both fund balances, because the 100 is not specified for any use other than emergency.
Yeah, but it's sales tax dollars.
Yeah, but my point is, they got 100, well, let's look at it two different ways. Instead of giving them a current expense fund balance of 250, let's give them a combined fund balance of, for current expense and capital of 250. 100 in capital and 180 in, I mean, that kind of makes sense. That'd be 280, right?
Wonder, is our question last time, she said something about that part, could be spent in capital?
Current expense can be spent for capital, but capital cannot be spent for current expense.
Okay,
I clarified that with Lynette.
okay.
Now, as
Because
Commissioner,
the capital is sales tax dollars, and by statute, that has to be done, used for capital or debt service.
Okay.
ask Commissioner Morris a question about the information he just was sharing. We have a figure of 188,370 total school discretionary funds. Now, you mentioned a total amount of 250.
That's two different things.
That's what I was trying to get at. Where's the line?
Yeah, my position on current expense is to give them that 640,000 that they have to have to stay the same, plus 188,370 for the discretionary items, which are the 2 social workers, and then 60 to either spend on supplies or one of those other things they have on the list.
Okay, 60 to maintain, and then plus the 188,370,
Yeah, 640,000 to maintain.
640.
351 plus the 188,370 would be the 2 social workers plus the 60 for either supplies or other use in that
That's what he's
list that they
that
gave.
money was his emergencies, 100,000
Are you
ain't
coming up
specified.
with
Gotcha.
13,033,003 plus the 60?
Do what now?
Are you coming up with the 3,033,003 plus the 60? Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
my numbers, the 640 she gave us to stay the same, in addition to what Jake recommended. 640,351.
That's, okay. Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, 643,51 plus 188,370 for those 2 social workers and 60,000 for the supplies.
Well, he's saying 128 plus, he's
60
recommending
plus the
60.
60.
Plus
we
the
don't
60.
want-
This would carry to 13,093.
Plus what we did amendment for the supplements.
No, the 60's for supplies,
Yeah, I know.
or one of those other things that she did.
On Lynette's sheet, she adds in that budget amendment. On my stuff, we don't. So I have, if you look at this, that's the total I'm looking at.
Okay.
See, I've got what we give them last year plus the 213, 231, which was the amendment for the teacher supplement.
Mhm.
Then the 600 and whatever, 600 some $1,000, which is to maintain them and give them what the revenue reduction was,
Mhm.
and then the 2 social workers.
Yeah,
So
and
then you wanna add the
60 more, yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm
Which is 13,093.
And then, you know, if they want 250,000 in their current expense fund balance, that's okay to request that. I don't, you know, what y'all think, I think we should give them maybe like a total of 250 that includes that 100 that's in capital that's not specified. It's the first thing on the capital list, it says for emergencies.
That's right there, yes.
So, I mean, that equals 280 for emergencies, basically, which is what the fund balance is for, right?
Yep.
That's just my opinion. I mean, you guys can have your opinion, but I think if we did that, then we would at least address the issue of their fund balance in both areas. You have any question on that, Julie? Anything? Okay. Okay, the next topic I have is the COLA. I'm still at 4% on that. Can I just go through this and then, and then y'all discuss them or something if you want to? On the equipment list, I just put is currently recorded to include that ambulance for financing, and also that truck for financing, that rollback truck. Economic development, I'm good with 200K left in there, plus 50K for 200K in capital reserve and 50K in professional services.
Okay.
That's what y'all have got right now,
Yes,
right?
yes.
4-cent fund, I have a new position on that. If we're only gonna put 285 in it instead of 600, is that what you said, 285 now? I just do not put anything in it. And just fill it up, put the normal amount in it next year, if we're down to 285.
What amount did we have going into that?
And our last discussion, it was 600 and something,
500.
500 and something. We've already said, and the financial advisor said we would have to put the full 1.1 in it next year. So if it's already down to 285 now from 500.
569,888.
I would be okay if you guys want to put 0 or some other number in it, or the 285 that they've got in it now. I'm kind of good with any of those.
I'd like to address that.
You wanna do that now and just, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm just
No,
trying
you
to
go
keep a
ahead, Count,
running
Bob,
list.
so we don't lose track of it.
I felt the same way.
Okay,
On the zero. Since we've got it,
yeah.
I mean, I find our advisors have said next year what we're at. So, I'm at zero.
Okay. I'll stop me on the rest of it.
That may interrupt, I was thinking we could, we'll wait until he finishes. That's my fault, Mr. Chairman.
He was, I think he was just gonna read off, and if we had any questions or concern about what he was reading off in, go ahead and clarify it then, and we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, on, new positions and reclassifications, I'm good, I think I'm good with the exception of that one position. That one that's, for workers' comp or whatever.
Okay. So all except,
Yeah, I think all that you had on your list, you got a list of them.
Yeah,
already.
it's
Yeah,
on that-
yeah, there's a
on the
list. Mhm.
Let me see. Yeah, I think I'm good with everything except that first one.
Okay,
And a feasibility study I'm good with for the wellness center. I'm good with a 1/4 cent sales tax whenever we can do it. And I would advertise that to be for, I think this fits the criteria, okay, for SROs and other school security measures. It would be one way we could word it, unless you guys have a better idea on that.
Could we put like a safety measures on there, because even, it's like if something went wrong in the building somewhere that could bring up a possible
Yeah. probably.
situation, you know, need to be repaired. That way it ain't all about, just about security, it's also, well, you got something that's fell in the building that could, you know, cause a safety issue with students, go ahead and get it repaired out of that fund.
Mhm. Yeah, I was trying to word it in a way that would be specific enough that they would support it, but not general enough that they wouldn't, but I think
Right.
that'd be okay. If you said safety and security,
Yeah,
those are two things that I think everybody would, and they give you some leeway of interpreting what those are, but, that's what they elect us to do, interpret that stuff, so. I've got fee schedule changes written down. I don't think anybody wants to change any fees. I kinda got that impression. I would be open to doing that if you wanted to. Occupancy tax, I'm in favor of, at least approving that and implementing it as soon as we can get a policy together. I'm in favor of the librarian increase, in favor of the YMCA contract. I'm in favor of paying the full overtime for EMS and communications, time and a half. Like to see the county and the school system bring us a 5-year unconstrained capital plan for next year's budget. Just kind of put that out. That doesn't exactly pertain to this year, but for next year. This is one you have to dig into a little bit. I'd like to see three processing assistant threes classified to processing assistants in 4 processing assistant 4s in DSS, because we made that exact change in the health department. We didn't do it in DSS, so we got a total mismatch there. People doing the same job with different classifications. So that's the only one of that's only one of DSS's reclasses.
Aren't there 4?
It would be 4 because they was gonna reclass one process assistant to a accounting tech, and that's not gonna happen, so there'll be 4. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, 4 of them.
I went and counted them.
That's the only one that I saw in reading through her narratives that had this mismatch problem I referenced the other night. If we get to it, there's 3 department heads that I did a comparison using that sheet you guys handed out. It looked to me to be kind of pretty badly out of whack. Their planning director, the arts director, and the voting folks. If we can get to that, we can decide if we want to do anything with them or wait for the classification study. But they seem to be pretty badly mismatched with the other department heads.
Elections.
I don't know which ones you recommended. Did you recommend those 3 or not?
I think they were on the list too.
I think
There
they're
were
on the
others.
list. I think they were. The rest of them I thought could wait. I also looked at Register of Deed versus the sheriff. They're both elected officials, and there's a pretty big difference in their classification. There's also a big difference, I think, in the jobs or the scope of their jobs. But that's something that probably we should look at to see, because they are both in that category of having to run for office and so forth. I just put a bullet at some point in time, and but it doesn't have to be during the budget approval tonight, but I think it's sometime before the fire commission meets again. We need to tell them how to address these requests for financing buildings outside of the county, whether we want to agree to do that or not. And, I don't have a firm position either way on it personally. But I think they need that policy guidance to be able to do their fire commission work for us. I just said I think the consensus commissioner pay process will stay the same for this year. I want to have a 25% fund balance minimum. I had a question, Julia, just come back to this, but if we doubled miscellaneous expense in the governing bodies, was there some reason for that? We doubled the miscellaneous expense in the governing body account. And then,
Excuse me, Commissioner Morrison,
Mhm.
Julia, I've kind of stumbled over that certain things in government. I'm not looking at it, don't have it in front of me, but there's things in that budget category that I was a little surprised to find there, so whatever, I think your question to Julia is a good one. What's in that it doubled?
yeah,
I think it's the.
I'll grab some coffee. Yes, sir. $1 million.
How about 2 million?
No, that'll work.
went like from 7 to 15,000 or something, I don't remember the number exactly.
That's what we pay for, decimals for employees and drug screens.
Drug screenings and physicals and.
I don't have a problem with it, I just was curious why it went up so
Yeah.
much. You tell
Do
me
you know-
later.
Do you remember why that went up much?
Remember why you,
Where'd it go from?
Miscellaneous.
I'm just sitting here mulling over it.
Just answer it later, then, you don't need none right now. Also, there was 100,000 transfer from capital reserve to the vehicle maintenance, was that for that generator you gonna put over there?
yeah, we took that generator out.
And you took it out, so you made the other adjustment, took 100 out too,
Yes.
okay. And then on the general, health department, on those Title 19, Medicaid things, transfers from the general fund, one of them went from 387 to 735. And another one, later on went up some more. Is there a reason that those are making those
You
big
put the
jumps?
4% COLA in there.
Hmm? Do what?
You have to put the 4% COLA because salaries are paid out of that.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back and took 100,000 out of their fund balance, so it's down to 600, some coming from general fund.
Oh, okay, it's down from 730 to 630 or something.
And see, we added the, position extender in there and the LPN,
Oh, okay,
and that's another reason it went up some this year.
okay, that's good, that's all I need to know on that. Then the next, I'm back down into the capital projects, I think we're good with the EMS station, Walnut Cove, doing one solid waste transfer, Walnut Cove first, and then Pinnacle, I guess, the next year. Putting off the fuel depot till next year. I don't have any kind of position on the storage maintenance building and the solid waste scale house yet. I couldn't determine kind of where you guys were on that yet, so I really didn't, I don't have a position either, I guess, till we look at the final numbers. And then the water project in Meadows, I think we agreed we were gonna go out and solicit an engineering firm. Did y'all put some money with doing that?
It's in that 200,000,
And what?
in that 200,000 for,
It
Okay,
was in the 500.
it's still not.
okay. Okay, so I'm good with doing that. On public buildings, does the HVAC control in this building, is that important to do this year? HVAC, 28,000?
Marcus seemed to think that some of the parts is gone beyond repair, and I don't think I think he told me that and the boiler is even if they can fix it, they can't get the part. Because they don't manufacture that unit anymore.
Okay. I guess I'm good with doing that and the boiler replacement. The demolition of the prison camp, I'm anxious to do that, but then I thinking, you know, we may have some project that comes up there that it could be incorporated into the project that we do at the camp. So I could either do it now or put it off a year, I guess. I think we probably need to replace the jail, replace the roof on the jail, old jail, and recover the courthouse, fuse down there. Let me take that was my own list, you know, and look at these things. Did we just go through Shannon's list she sent us today, the updated to-do list? Y'all want to just keep going? Or
That's fine.
Guide me to the Shannon's list.
Where's your pay handouts from today?
Hey, let me track it down.
You do it, top right
I don't remember seeing that, but here it is, I bet. No, it's the election stuff. I think I got mixed in with some of my other papers. Shannon, would you have
We laid
that?
one over there for you, but I've got some extras.
Yeah. At the time you get here with it, I might find the other one.
Here you go.
Sorry,
Okay.
A lot of papers. There you go. There's another one.
thank you. Okay,
And the first one on that's the one I talked about already, which was the, about what we're gonna put in the 4-cent fund, the 285 or 0 or something in between. Then defining what we're gonna do with the 4-cent fund and probably naming it maybe if we need to reflect whatever we decide we're gonna do with it. Term of fund balance for the school system, I already talked about that. The county, I think we want to do, I'd support doing this assessment of the county buildings and maybe combining that with the school system to make an assessment of what capital needs are required there so that we could work on that in the next couple of budgets after this one,
doesn't it say
maybe with the 4-cent
here that
fund.
we're already looking at the school buildings?
Yeah, we were first doing just the county buildings, and then I think Jake went and talked to him about doing the school.
Yeah, it's-
So, yeah,
it's-
I support doing that.
Listed as both.
Capital and school capital, I've already talked about, COLA I talked about. Equipment list, I think we talked about that. Personnel list, we talked about. Feasibility study, capital projects. Capital reserve levels. I think we're pretty good on that. I mean, we got that sheet Julie gave us, so we can, how much is left in public buildings if you take out that extra part of public buildings? Is there, like for the HVAC's what I'm thinking about specifically. If we got
Well,
enough,
if you take what's budgeted right now, it would leave 354,579 in there.
that's enough to fix the HVAC that failed this year, should be, right? I think.
But now that's leaving all that was listed on public buildings coming out.
And then there's still that much
And that's
left.
the removal, that's the
Demolition.
Demolition.
prison camp.
So you can do all those 5 things in public buildings and still have 380 something left?
That's just in the HVAC, roofs and others. Now
Mhm.
paving, I got separate.
Yeah, HVAC's what I'm interested in, is just having enough to fix an HVAC if it fails without having to wait for a board meeting. I guess we would anyway to do the budget.
It still has to be moved out of capital reserve.
Yeah. But we can do it emergency if we have to. Yeah, those public building projects, what we want to do, I've talked about those. The water project we talked about, 5-year capital plans, fee schedule. The hourly thing, that's the overtime, I guess we're gonna do on that for EMS and communications. The tax, everybody good with 97.52 on the tax rate, right, collection rate?
It's up there pretty good. Would be one of the higher ones we've used, would it, Jake? 97.52.
It's based on the audit from the tax collection rate, where it's based on
What
the
do we
audit from
use
the
for
previous.
18-19?
9752.
Mhm.
So we use that in this,
It
this,
comes from the audit.
right.
And right now, she's projecting the 9752 because
For
that's
this
what it
year,
was.
actual for this year.
Mhm.
The
Yes.
And what did we,
The
what did we?
17-18 audit states a 97.52% collection rate, and that's what you have to use.
The other one is not done yet. We do not know the actual collection rate from the auditor on the 18-19.
You answered my question because I was wondering what we used for the previous year, and you're saying 97.52 for.
No, that's this year.
We're using it this year also.
Last year's was whatever, I don't remember what the audit.
What are our options with it? Could we make it higher if we wanted to?
Or lower.
Or
You can't
lower?
go
You
over.
can't go
You make
over,
it
but you
under,
can
but
make-
you can't go over.
Yeah, we make
You
it
could be a
lower.
little conservative and shave some off of it.
With the collecting the vehicle tax, I mean, it almost,
The vehicle tax is at 100%,
Yeah, it's
what the
100.
LGC recommends you
Right.
yeah,
budget.
sorry.
You don't base it on the collection rate, because that's collected by the Department of Revenue, and that's what the local government commission recommends you use.
Yeah, I'm good with 97.52 anyway, so. And the occupancy tax we talked about, the librarians, I think I said I would like to do their pay increase.
Mhm.
Is that already in there?
The library.
It is? Okay,
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
I had a question about reducing auto supplies since we're leasing the vehicle fleet. I don't know if that's worth dealing with, or maybe wait a year and
Until
see.
we really get them in here and see,
Okay.
I did go back through and look at what they've spent, and everybody's close to what is budgeted. I cut some last year because I thought they was a little bit over, because I based it on what they spent that year.
We could get a year of experience
Yeah,
before we
and then
change
we
that,
can
I
see
guess.
next year if we can reduce it.
ESS health boards, that really doesn't have anything to do with the budget, I don't think. Department heads. I'll meet with department head, we met with everybody already. YMCA, I've talked about the fire department funding thing, the new jobs. Updated new job description approved for the reclassifications. I want to make sure the board approves the job descriptions, but they don't have to be approved for the budget.
Okay.
We can approve the job descriptions of anything based on, approve them based on the job description coming to the board for approval. That's what we've always done. Before you advertise it and fill it or whatever. 25%. No tax increase, we've all agreed to that. Jimmy had added the thing about the opioid, what we're doing about that, and I think if we support the social workers, we've answered his question on that. It's one way of addressing the opioid problem. And the SRO thing we figured out now with our $100,000 and the sheriff's recommendation. I don't know about this thing at the bottom you put on here about the 31-31 split.
Right, it was just a question of, do you want to leave the tax rates to reflect how they are 31-31, or a true rate for school current expense if the money's being divided a little differently?
I think if you advertise it accurately, you'd have to report to what it is, wouldn't you?
2933.
I think you've got the true rate.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Because
we just
the
wanted
minute
to
you don't
have
do the
clarification
true-
on the board
You do
consensus to
not
make
do
sure.
the true rate,
Mhm.
you're not giving the citizens of Stokes County the true rate.
Mhm.
And that's why we went that route.
Exactly.
Now, it was 31-31,
Mhm.
but it's not 31-31 now. It's
33.29.
That's
Right.
exactly right.
Yeah, if you weren't gonna advertise the actual amounts, then there was no reason to split it in the first place, I would say.
We just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we had clarification on that.
That's just my, in the end, it'll take 3 votes, but that's my opinion.
I don't see how you can't put the exact right amounts on
I
there.
think you got to.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to. So that's those two lists, and then Shannon had a list she emailed today that, I don't know if it's, I just took the front of your email.
Mhm.
Is there anything different, anything we hadn't covered in that list?
No, we were just, Julie and I, and Jake sat yesterday for a long time trying to, gosh, wow, sorry, go through some things and cut some things here and there to sort of make up for a little, Excel spreadsheet error that was going on to sort of fix that problem. So all this is really in there. I just kind of put some of the bigger things in there as I was outlining it.
Okay, it's in everything I just talked about.
Yeah, everything's in there. It was just some things that some more things that we changed a little bit after the meeting, per se.
What sheet are you referring to? Because I ain't get my cell
It's
phone.
the
or nothing on
email.
there.
When I
From the
emailed,
email.
it's my, it's,
Look at it right quick.
it's the
Yeah.
front. I've got a copy of it too.
So I ain't seen my computer or nothing all day.
Yeah, it was just like in this, in the actual email where the attachments weren't there, there's that.
Okay.
Us retirees stay home and fiddle with this while y'all out working.
Well, I had family stuff, and funeral and all today, so it's been,
Yeah.
That's right, I forgot about that. That's my kind of, everything I could think of today and kind of where I'm at on it, or I'm ready to discuss it with you guys. That's very good.
I will say, I do want to see that 60,000 go in, for materials and stuff at the schools. And how much money could we get, we went to an even 25%? How much is that 0.1% worth?
The 25.10.
Mhm.
No, I got it on my other sheet.
Plus, I identified additional revenue too, Julie, if you take that, if you put 0 in the 4-cent fund.
Excuse me.
I identified some additional revenue there, if you
Yeah,
put
if
0
you
there.
didn't do the money into the 4-cent fund, there's $285,000.
There's a difference there.
You wouldn't have to take it from, and really you could reduce fund balance
1%,
if you did not do that.
0.1%, about 52,000. It's $517,000 to do 1% point.
So leaving that whatever in there would raise it almost, yeah.
If you left it in there, it's gonna raise it.
Yeah, one other question occurred to me, all this leasing of vehicles, we've already got that covered, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
That's
you show that as a revenue proceeds from
from,
financing,
Mhm.
that's the way I have to show it to cover the expense
Okay.
in the department. So see, that covers that. So
okay. Yeah, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to double check.
So can I ask, what, as of this exact moment, County Manager, what is the number for the current expense for the school system?
Right now, it's 13,033,003.
033.
That's without the 60.
It's without the
What's on
60.
that sheet is what it is as of this moment.
That's what we have.
13,033,000.
That's everything with the exception of the 60,000.
So, let's go back and remember that we give the school system the money. We give the school system the money. We cannot mandate how this goes. And you understand that? And you do understand that once we give them the money.
Right. We can't tell them what to do with it.
We can't tell them anything
Right.
how they can spend it.
Right.
So if.
But we could say we
Wait,
did give you the
wait,
money
wait,
to do it.
Wait a minute. Now. Back to what happened last year. I'm not going through that whole thing,
Right.
but we say we want to give them money for supply. And I get 10 teachers at first day to know why they didn't get any money for supply. What am I gonna tell them?
Call Katie.
And say she was here when we did it, she heard us.
You know how important it is teachers to have their supplies. You know how many times I'm told, and haven't you been a teacher? And haven't you taken money out of your pockets to buy supplies? I have too. So if we tell them we want it to come, we want it to go towards supplies, and Jimmy Walker, Commissioner Walker gets 25 phone calls first week. And I thought y'all were gonna give us money for supplies. They didn't get it from somewhere else. What can we do about it? Mr. Chairman?
Tell them to go back and look at the recordings on YouTube and tell them to look at the meetings where we said we gave them money for.
That's why I
It's
wanted-
recorded now, you can't hide it.
That's why I wanted our meetings recorded.
Yeah, it's on video. Yes, sir. That's that young technology coming out here for it right there.
Good question.
I'm gonna be quiet now and pass it on.
Go ahead, Julie.
Answer to your question, fund, make it 25%, you could use 4,326,422. It'd be 25.01, that'd give you an additional 50,406.
Instead of 4,276, it would be what? Instead of 4,276, it'd be
422,
4,
422.
all right, I got the,
4,326,422.
all right,
And that'd give an additional 50,406.
which is, yeah,
And that'd be 25.01, that's about as close as I can get it.
That's pretty good.
and the question, if I may, Commissioner
Yes,
Mendenhall,
I'll be glad.
and I asked this, and Commissioner, whomever, I asked this previously, is how much currently in the school budget is there for, books and supplies? I don't know. And I've said this before, I won't repeat it, I'll just brush by it very quickly. I've actually seen their budget at one time, that line item, where it was dipped into very heavily, 350,000 plus a little, and used for other purposes, out of books and supplies. So even though we mean well, you've made a very good point, Mr. Previous Superintendent. We have no latitude, no control whatsoever over how those funds are spent. But we can do our part, and we can make certain funds available.
Which I will say, I do believe we got a good school board that would hold their word. I don't see a reason why we didn't trust them on that.
We've always had good school boards, but they've sometimes surprised us a little bit here and there.
I think we have some leverage with the school board because, they know they have to come back next year and get a budget from us.
Well,
That gives you a little bit of leverage, I think.
I agree.
they're getting a substantial increase this year.
I've had a
Almost
request
$1 million.
for a short break. Is everybody okay with that for a few minutes?
Food break.
Okay. We'll recess about 5 minutes.
Sure, quite. Jerry, you okay?
I'm just going by what they got.
Are you overwhelmed?
No, I'm not overwhelmed, not at all.
You go over,
Are
not
you-
overwhelmed, underwhelmed.
All right.
basis while doing it.
But Vince, I didn't say men didn't do nothing, that they stay busy.
All right.
Said men
But
were
we
lazy.
didn't turn off
You
the
said
work.
men were lazy.
I never said that, that's the
All
first
right,
time
we're on
I've
with
heard
Dave.
that word, Dave. You better turn around there, boy.
I'll end it with one thing right here before we get back in. There's one in my church, and she always says 50-50.
50-50.
50-50. Call this session back to order. And I believe, I was told, Miss Julie, you want to share something with us?
What I've seen in the school budget here, it's, supplies was 100. Last year, 18-19 supplies was 126,404, and they upped it to 186,404, that's the $60,000.
Okay.
Which puts us on 25%.
Yeah, if you take the 60,000 out of fund balance, that'll put us at 24.99.
So if we gave him 50,000, they'll still keep us between,
Yes.
above 25%.
But that's also
But
still
that's-
assuming that you're putting
But
that
the
money in the
285
4 cents.
right.
If you elect not to do that, then you're way over.
$285,000 into the school/F tech fund or 4-cent fund, then yes, you would, but if you don't put that in there, then that's going to take the fund balance.
I stated my position on that the other day. I think I'm perfectly fine with, I mean, I stated if we're gonna do 50%, why do anything? So 25%, even more so, leaning towards just doing nothing this year. And then next year, of course, we're gonna have to.
You'll have to come back online.
Yeah, while we're talking about that,
Yeah.
can we get kind of a consensus on that
Consensus on that?
topic? Julie and I are trying to compile a little bit of a list.
Okay,
So
great.
basically what you're saying is we don't put it in this year, we have to put it in next year.
Right.
Basically double it up.
If we put it in this year, we still have to put it in next year.
You don't have to double it up.
You have to
next
double
year,
it, you
but
have to just do the
You gotta
amount.
do the amount, which is 1.1.
1,139,775, I think.
It's pretty good. I'm impressed on that. I'm going, we're going with 9 this year. Mr. Walker?
That might already be. If we don't do it this year, it's an automatic for next year, so what difference does it make? It's either gonna hit this year's budget or hit next year's. Next year's, we're gonna be working to try to keep, probably, this is gonna have the same board, I doubt if too many of us change our mind as far as the 25% fund balance. So we're gonna be battling to keep things, arrange things around or deal with things based on keeping that 25% fund balance next year. This just makes it a lot harder not doing anything this year and hitting it all. So really, whether we don't do it this year or do it long-term, if we gotta keep the 4-cent fund viable, it doesn't really make that much difference, as I said.
So you go with 9 this year?
I'd rather see us put something in the fund this year so it wouldn't hit next year's budget so hard. Because, number one, as far as next year's fund balance, we're probably not gonna have the same kind of rather plush margin that we've had this year. We're drawing it down to 25%. It's probably not gonna go back up to 33% like it was this year. So it's gonna be a tougher budget next year than this year. So we're just deferring it to next year when it's already gonna have enough challenges. But I'm not, it's not a deal breaker for me. I'm not gonna be all bent out of shape if nothing goes in it. I'd be more comfortable if we were a little more responsible as far as this year's budget and say, we know it's coming, let's go ahead and address at least some of it in this year's budget.
Commissioner Morris?
0 for this year, I think. If it's down to 285, ain't gonna make that much difference anyway.
Commissioner Mendenhall?
Well, earlier I had said 0. to having, like everybody else does, the ability to change your mind on this. I'm at zero right now, but I'm not.
Okay.
Well, sounds like we're at a 4.25 vote, so.
Okay, all right.
4.25.
Okay.
You kinda, yeah.
Some left over, we can put it in it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I guess, as I look through this, two of the big things that I looked at was the to-do list, which was make that, and, positions, COLA, time and a half, the communications, SROs, which we talked about, 20,000 on that. Capital reserve, we'll make sure that I've got all this clear in my head. We started out at 500,000 on capital, economic development, we're cutting it down to 200,000, is that correct? From 500 to 200, that's cutting 300,000.
Yes.
Cut on the account of professional services, 50,000.
Yes.
And at this time, we're still got the, number 6 unit ambulance down.
Yes.
We wanted to go ahead with the, waste, for one cover and hold off for 1 year on the chemical.
I have put, 300,
85,000.
300,382, that was half of that figure.
After you took out the vehicle.
Yeah, after I took out the vehicles.
The tr-
30,382 is what's out there.
Okay, thank you on that. And, on the public buildings, was everybody in agreement for both custodian and maintenance, that's one to stay in?
I wasn't.
I can't remember if that was everybody in agreement?
What was your question,
On
please?
public buildings, the custodian and maintenance, that's one position. Some of the only positions here on this page. Sure, I can remember it.
So this sheet.
Like the board ratio, please, and the sheriff's office position. Just make sure I'm covered. I mean, if we make some headway tonight, we might be able to come to a vote.
Make a motion anytime.
I know we can. We're done.
It's been done.
I saw what happened a year or two ago with, Commissioner Walker. So everybody was okay with those two positions. And we switched the arts council manager to 100% county.
Yeah.
And everybody was okay on that.
Sort of, maybe.
Okay,
I'm,
I'm asking for if there was any
yeah,
discussion.
I'm gonna be going through a list also with some,
I'll finish up in that minute.
Not trying to rush you.
Let you, have the floor then, let me see if there's any other questions. So, we are in agreement that we're going to do the 5-year plan, both the government center buildings and the school building.
Currently, you got $35,000 cost on a study that Peterson Gordon is doing for the building. I have asked him to add the schools. That cost is still yet to
So
come.
we don't know what that cost will come.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I think you have contingency.
And, yeah, right, Joe, you said said
at
she
least
had.
double those.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the structures,
More than double,
I'd
probably.
say more than double.
So,
But
but
we got 19 schools.
she's got, she said would take care of that portion.
Contingency.
Mr. Walker, I'm trying to hurry, so.
No, goodness, no, not on that count, no.
On the fuel decode, did we decide to cut it out?
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
I've got 0 for it.
Mhm.
And that was mine, I know, that was mine, I thought about it.
I will vote on that, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Because that's why we took that generator.
What about the water project when that was, that was left in it? Or take it
Part of
out?
that 200,000 for economic development. Yeah, that's in there.
I think we asked them, said they'd have them bring us an RFP for engineering firm or whatever.
Mark,
Look at that.
yeah,
And they're working on that.
Mark is working on that already.
$60,000 supplies for
Mhm.
school. We kinda got a vote right on that one.
I told you that I was gonna go 25%. If we can give them 60 and keep it on, the 25 or above, I'm okay.
Well, I think you can, because it sounds like we have 4, and I know Commissioner Walker's still thinking on that one, that are okay with not doing any transfer to the 4 cents, so you would definitely stay.
Yeah.
It's not just me.
Right.
I've seen many of my teachers
Mhm.
spend their own money on supplies. And if we help a little bit, that's fine. I just want to make sure, we don't start knocking ourselves way back down. And what about the YMCA contract? Did we ever discuss that?
I'm good on it. I think the other night, the overwhelming majority was in favor of it, but unless anyone's changed their position.
And that money that was being used outside of King to do activities in the rest of the county, is that correct?
Not really, not at all.
I went down there, I had them to pull me something on what everything they had spent the money on. They actually, with the money we gave them, they actually dipped in about another $30,000 their money to do these projects around the county, and they showed me what projects they had done.
Now, technically, unless somebody has some information that indicates otherwise, that, and I'll wait till my turn if you want me to, but that $125.95 is the total, the absolute total that the county spends on recreation for the entire county. With exception, well, that's all the county spends. And if we're gonna have a contract, I'll wait if you want me to. If we're gonna have a contract with a Y and you wanna stick with it, which I wonder how much research you've actually done about the current contract, I think it's very unfair to the Y to say, here's $120,000, you do the recreation for the whole county with that. It's not enough. If they're gonna do recreation and they dip it in $130,000 of their own funds, there needs to be more county money put up for recreation than this $120,000 we're giving them. Otherwise, the Y members, as I would be seeing it, are subsidizing recreation in other parts of the county, even though they all realize they're just paying a fee like I am, $35 a month, for the Y and King. So we got some work to do there, but I'll wait my turn.
That's
Sorry,
fine.
I'm pretty, why don't you gavel me? I'm out of order.
No, you're fine. That's all they requested, so.
Well, I'm gonna finish up so we can
Go
get.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I apologize, Commissioner Menado.
So, Julia, everything, I just went down and shouted, I think I said yes or no on everything. The only thing I ask you to remember is the same thing I said every night. No tax increase, and keep it at 25% or above on fund balance. And then you heard my yay and nay on that. So, Commissioner Walker.
Oh, let one of them,
Commissioner Ross or whoever,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, sure, whoever.
Wherever one of y'all two wanna go, that's
He was going out.
Go ahead, Commissioner Walker.
I'll use Shannon's list since it incorporates a lot of what Commissioner Morris had on his list as well. First item, I seem to be in a distinct minority there because I just don't see the advantage in making sort of a fake budget this year as far as those funds that we gonna be needing for the, I'm on the second item here, I think, no, first item. I think we're just doing a little bit of a shell game, because those funds are gonna have to be put into the 4-cent fund at some time. We're just putting it off to next year's budget, which probably, or possibly, is going to be a tougher budget than this one. Might make it a little tough on people running for reelection. But you've already, I think the majority of the board's already cast their vote there, so I'm sawing sawdust, I'll move on. The fund balance for the school, I kinda like Commissioner Morris's idea, just lump it into one fund, boost it up some. I think he suggested 250 instead of 188 or something like that. And that might work. Don't know what Julia did as far as the budget we're currently looking at, whether she revised it with that amount or not. You did not.
I didn't know an amount to do it.
Well, he suggested 250, I believe, which was not a new total 250. It was just rolling everything into that one amount.
What I really said was that, I think when we look at their fund balance, they spend it on both current expense and capital. And technically, we've given them $100,000 in capital already, cost the first line on the capital
Okay.
is for emergencies, it's not for anything specific. So that, I consider that a fund balance, and then they've got 180 projected, so if you add those two together, that's 280.
Just
Which, you know, they're not totally interchangeable, they're kind of interchangeable one way. And so, you know, whether there's more than that's needed or not, but if 250 is the number, then I think we kind of met the 250 by doing that. But
Well, I think Julia has said a key thing that we just always got to remember, and, you know, part of it is now is on the 100,000 that Commissioner Morris just mentioned, that was emergencies from capital.
Yes.
And you cannot shift capital.
shift it the other way, but not that way.
To capital, and you just need to always remember that. General can be shifted to capital, but capital cannot be shifted.
And one other thing while we're talking school board fund balance, or school system fund balance. To the best of my knowledge, anytime they've had an emergency situation develop, boilers, roofs, whatever, we've stepped up to the plate and covered it out of our fund balance. So even though they don't have a substantial amount in their fund balance, they technically have access to our fund balance. We have to approve it, but we do kind of retain control over those funds. So I like your idea, Commissioner Morris, that sounds workable to me.
I would go as high as 250 under current expense along with the 100 if the rest of the board wanted to. But
No,
I'm perfectly fine with it like it is.
Yeah, I'm where you just described.
Based on this estimate.
And the fact that I just mentioned is they can have access to our fund balance, all they need is to present it to us and for us to say
Well,
yes.
and we've shown that we work with.
A willingness.
They came to us a couple of years ago asking for the art position. And we approved that.
Right.
If you remember that.
I'm not comfortable with the substantial increase that I'm seeing for current expense for the schools, but I don't know how to get a grip on it. I wouldn't know where to begin to try to adjust that. COLA, I paid a lot of attention to our county manager's recommendation. He recommended 2% there. I support his recommendation. Equipment list, I think we didn't do much with that. The one item that seems to have been cut because we may not need it due to some changes was a generator, and, somebody help me with that, please? Is there any need at all for that generator, or just not as much as it used to be? Because here's what I was thinking, if there is still a need for it, could that be financed along with, some of our other equipment, and we would not have that much impact in this year's budget if we decided to go ahead and have it available,
You'll still have to be added back in
right?
to the
But is
equipment.
it any need at all for it or not?
Well, it could still be a need for it, it could run the Autumn Square, but we felt like if the fuel depot was
Put on hold.
putting on hold, that, the main reason for it being in the budget was to run that entire, like, to be able to get gas when the power was off over there. So
So-
if that's being put on hold, that just was.
So what if power's off now
It's just off.
for
Unless,
Autumn Square?
unless you put a transfer switch down there for just the vehicle maintenance section.
Right.
Plug in a
We can do that,
temporary,
do it, go switch.
So,
And
so,
that, EMS has got a pull-behind large generator that can carry it.
right, transfer switch is just a fraction of what a generator would be, I would think.
Concept's, it's a good concept, what you're thinking about. The problem is you have to add that whole 100 to the budget, though,
To the
to
budget,
finance.
Yeah.
And so then your 25% gets in jeopardy pretty quick.
Mhm.
And we're already struggling with that.
Yeah.
Reclassifications, and, I've been a little bit hard line on that one. I've been pushing to just deal with that, with our, salary study, and not cherry pick it, not pick this position and that position, say we're just gonna lift them out and leave the others to be done with the salary study, so that's kind of where I am with that. Feasibility study with the wellness center, not really, I wish we'd just go ahead and build a wellness center. People in this part of the county want it and need it, and beating around the bush, but I'll go with the feasibility study if that's a necessary step. But also like the,
25%.
do what?
I said that wellness center pitches 25%.
Well, it wouldn't be in this year's budget, it would be due when it was built. So we're looking probably 2 budgets down the road, that's after the revale. And nothing to do with this year's 25%.
Yeah, we'll do with what you got there proposed.
I would rather look at financing myself instead of a $2 million lump sum, although I would have voted for the lump sum had I been there. Now that I've had a chance to think more about it, I think, the usual way our county does things is probably preferable. And if we can get, USDA money for less than 3%, 40 years, that's probably the way to go on this project, and maybe some other projects.
Some message, Richard.
Would like the feasibility study to cover, if we're gonna do one, I wish we would do it right. I'd like to know the satisfaction level of our citizens regarding county services. Do we have any gaps? Is there anything that we're doing that they don't feel like is worth what it's maybe costing the county to do it? Include some of that if we can. We had a study like that done in King, and it proved to be very worthwhile. Capital projects, fund, what was your position on that, Commissioner Morris? That number, 10.
I'll tell you right. On the capital projects, mine
Yes.
was, do the Walnut Cove EMS station, do, only one transfer station, that's Walnut Cove, do
Right.
vehicles probably the next year. Don't do the field thing, I didn't have a solid position on the storage maintenance building and the solid waste scale house. Those are not in there, right, Julia?
No.
Joey, the storage, he's asking about the storage maintenance building.
The storage maintenance building and the solid waste building are not in, right? Or are they? in
they
your
are
number?
right now, because nobody said whether to take them out or in.
Oh, they are in your number?
Yeah.
to 25%.
I think we agreed on that the other night, didn't we?
I like
Then we
to
go
do
down
both
through the
of them.
projects and agree and disagree on them.
But
Yeah.
that was, that's the, that's
Right.
Yeah, that's capital project fund.
not.
It's number
That's
10.
not general.
No, that's not general, it's capital project fund.
All right, but that was still number 10 on the
It's number 10
Yeah.
on
to do there.
Right,
sentence.
Yes.
right, but
Yes, sir.
I just wanna make sure everybody hears that, it's not general, that's very important.
It was kind of a mix on that, so I didn't know whether to take it off or leave it, or, so I just let
Okay, I'm gonna put a question mark with that one in there.
I think you also got the roof at the jail in there also, don't you?
that's under public building.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to do those two, be my answer, but if we had to cut one of them or something.
Well, I mean, it don't hurt to leave them there, don't mean you have to do them this next year.
Capital reserve levels are adequate.
And I'll give all y'all a list of what's in there.
Hey, Julia, is this something you can kind of,
There you go, Commissioner.
thank you,
This sheet tells you what's in there
at this
at
time?
today's date. Now, I'm probably gonna have another budget amendment to move some in, that projects that's not gonna be completed by June 30th, that we need to, have the money held. But this is what's in there at this time. And it's by department.
Some of them are pretty substantial amounts. We got one at 614,000.
And that's the HVAC, roofs and
Right.
others.
121 right above it. All right, Julia and Jake, question is, and I'd be interested in collectively, your opinions. Is the current amount for capital reserve in this budget at this time adequate for the specific uses?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It's gonna take care of what you have in this budget.
and Julia,
And you'll have, if you do the public building projects that is in the budget out of it, and the $125,000 for the, scale of building over at solid waste, it will leave $354,579 out of that, instead of the 614. So still,
Right.
that's adequate if a AC or something should.
But, yeah, it'll leave funds in case of emergency come up that you guys can go back to.
and if worse came to worse, these funds could be replenished from our general fund if we had to, but I'd rather not see us get into that kind of situation. So you're giving a thumbs up with this, that this should work.
Yes.
We don't have consensus from the board on that yet, I don't think, but we got two more yet to speak. I'm gonna give this my thumbs up based on what I'm hearing from you and Julia. You're the ones who really monitor these funds and you see the need. Projects recommended in public buildings. Commissioner Morris, what was your take on public buildings? Please.
I think I said we probably should do all of those, except that I wasn't sure about the prison camp,
Okay,
whether we should,
that's 120, isn't it, for that?
120,000, you could, theoretically, you could have some project come up over there, and the project cost might include them.
Exactly.
But then, if you wanna make it look pretty to market it, then we probably should them up it, so.
Well, I had thought about that too. Is there an intermediate step that we could do? Not haul away a whole bunch, but just sort of clean it up, dress it up some without spending the full 120? But we're right at 25% anyway, so that's probably a discussion for another time.
Well, you mean that, you talking about just going over and whacking
Yeah.
down the weeds and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
cutting down the brush that's growing over there and There's one or two buildings, if they stay a while, they're not all that bad, they're prize-winning condition. I think we owe it to that community. They've put up with that prison site being there the way it is for a long time. And I think we owe it to them to at least say, we've heard you, we're planning to do something about this. We may have to do it sequentially in steps, but we're gonna be doing something. We're gonna try to at least get a lick or two in.
Are you volunteering to do some community work?
I'm lazy.
I mean, if you want me over in a few weeks, I'll help push
You're
back some of that
the
stuff.
energy person,
Well, I
and
was
you
gonna
got
be
all
the
that good
supervisor.
equipment too. You've seen it out your, you got some nice equipment.
I was just gonna supervise. I
You
don't know
can
what
do
you're
that
talking
with
about
all
here.
that equipment you have in 3 or 4 days. Okay,
You could fence it in where you couldn't see it.
put a privacy fence around it. Yeah, stranger things have happened, but I'm not on board with it, just for the record.
I'd like to see it cleaned up, and if we gotta prioritize this.
Yeah.
I'd rather do the other 4 things, I guess, first out of that 5 that are in that.
The water project for Meadows, I'm very interested in how far we can go with that and what grants are available. What are we doing to evaluate? There was some discussion about hiring an engineering firm, putting out, I think, RFPs or hiring an engineering firm.
Mark has started that process, and he's had a meeting with the USDA about it, and he's working on the RFQ, as he said yesterday.
Request for quotes.
Mhm.
There seemed to be collective interest with the board in at least keeping that option open. I don't know that there's anything, what do we actually have in the budget now, 100 in capital reserve? Do you, how much, 100,000 for the water project plus how much else?
There's 200,000 going over there, and 100 of it can be used for the water project.
Okay,
So that leaves another 100.
okay,
Which is just sort of a baseline number that Mark got from some people saying we need to start with as far as securing somebody to come in and start looking at things, the engineer fees. So a lot of those things are also refundable things later on, but just to get it started would be about that much.
Yeah, we would do the board would do a resolution saying they will pay themselves back from the financing. And we would include those costs in there. We pay ourselves back when we went out for financing.
right. So how much do we need for the RFQs to get that started?
That $100,000 we were talking about that's set inside the economic development would get that process
Right.
moving as far as securing an engineer and all those things that need to be done to start that.
And we had 50 for contracts, advertising, and all in economic development.
No, that's just his professional services.
Professional services.
Yeah.
Now is that Tori's?
Well,
Is
that's,
that what he does with his website and
some of
promoting
that
the
goes to
county
that,
and,
yes.
and all that?
yes.
Because I don't want to cut him too, that young man's doing a good job.
That's,
And don't want to hamstring him, don't want to cut his finances to where he can't keep doing the kind of work he's doing now.
you've increased it right much.
Okay,
Off there.
good.
And the things that he needs as far as for printing, advertising, the app that all that stuff is already built in.
Okay. I think we determined, we got, number 4, and number 14 seem to be very similar, maybe identical. And I think we've determined that from Jake, and I know you've said this a couple of times, but since I'm at number 14, you're in the process of doing a study with Peterson Gordon, and you're now including the schools, and I think Commissioner Flores, maybe others, but they kind of joined in and said, it may be twice as much.
Yeah, because their structures that some of the schools control is, they have more. It's just more, it's more,
More buildings.
more buildings. It's
19,
just more
isn't it?
square footage sitting there for these schools that it has to take into. So it just for an example off the top of my head, if he's got $30,000 in for a 5-year plan that will allow his engineers and architects to come in and study the inside and outside of all of our structures, then the schools they will come in that much, if not a half again as much. So you may have a study here that's doing everything for the county and the schools, be as much as 75,000.
Right.
But we got the funds sitting there to take care of it.
Okay, very good. Very good. Fee schedule, there have been times when I went along with adjusting the county's fee schedule. This is not a move that I take lightly because the people that are impacted by it, needless to say, are not comfortable with it. They don't like it. So I would want to hear from our department heads in whatever department that we're looking at and let them lobby for a fee schedule directly if they think one's needed. And I'm not saying yes or no to it, but I'll just keep a limited open mind on that one. If overtime or hourly schedules, we do an EMS, I think. I went back and looked at the list of counties that are not paying true overtime. And if I looked at that list correctly, when Surrey County does what it appears they're headed toward doing, they're gonna pay true overtime, we would be the only county in this area not paying true overtime. And I don't wanna do that to our EMS director. I think that would really put him at a disadvantage as far as trying to recruit personnel. So I'm on board. I think we've all agreed to that anyway, so we're good. Property tax rate, 97.52, y'all told me that's fine, that's what we had last year. Occupancy tax, I've shied away from this, but I'm moving more toward, might be worth taking a look at. So I'd like to see some information on that. I don't think it's ready to be put into this budget. Librarians, I think the total impact on the budget for the library's request was about 20,000.
Yes.
So we're not talking a major amount here. That would bring them up to the average for the area, I believe.
That would bring them up to what they said, it was about 28%.
Their salary study, yeah.
Their salary study,
Yep.
and they were supposedly about 28% low.
Yeah, well, what I think the salary study would say is here's your average for the area. Y'all are here, it's there.
That's exactly what it was.
And they're only budgeted 1/3 this year.
It's
Right.
spaced.
So total is 60, but we're only agreeing to a third this year, aren't we?
Right.
All right, auto supplies, we're getting new vehicles. No way that we're gonna be paying as much in auto supplies. They're all under warranty. Great, thank you, Lord. Budget changes and reinstituting a DSS and health boards. That's gonna take some work to do that. I don't think there'd be a lot of cost. We pay those board members $30 per diem. So we're not talking much there anyway. Julia's great at finding funds. She can handle that one.
Yeah, that's what we're paying.
Yep. Additional department heads. This is where it gets interesting. I made a note. I look at it differently from, I think, the way Commissioner Morris described it. Because, yes, there is difference in department heads' compensation, but there is a vast difference in level of responsibilities. And when we have a department head who's over 3 employees counting themselves, and we have another department head that's over maybe 5, that's not a good comparison. And so that needs to be, to me, we're jumping the gun if we go in now and we start messing with department heads' salaries without, I think we sort of tying our hands in a way, depending on what the salary study shows, because it's gonna say someone over 3 employees is not quite in the same range as somebody over 75.
I'm sorry, I think it's just asking about if we need to meet with them, any more department heads during the budget process.
Thank you, sir. Where'd I get that?
Well, the
That's
other
okay.
thing's an item too, so.
Yeah, I might have covered it prematurely, but y'all
That's all
get
right.
the drift
You
of.
still covered it, so that's all. that matters.
Okay. YMCA, we're not doing enough for recreation in this county, I'm convinced. I picked up, I went online today, and my internet at home is finally working again. And so where the Parks and Recreation Department of King is sponsoring some nice events. And it's just amazing to me that even with a Y located mile and a half from City Hall in King, they have a Parks and Recreation Department, and it's starting to really do some good things along with the Y. I would like to see a Parks and Recreation Department for the county. If the Y keeps doing what they're doing, fine. Our citizens are being doubly blessed in some ways, hopefully. But I just don't think we're doing enough for recreation. Y'all have heard that sermon before, and I'm not passing offering plate. Fire Service Commissioners, property outside the county, I would want to see a recommendation from our fire commission, and they might have already made one. But I'd like to see a recommendation from our fire commission to give us something to start with on this before we just jump in and grab hold of it. I think their name's on it more than ours, even though we would be the ones who give it final approval.
Can I comment on that for a second?
Yes, sir.
I agree with you, that's a good idea to do that, as long as we address it between us somehow or the other. The thing about it, I think the issue is that, I may not have said before, but I think I heard the fire commission say was that when those guys outside of the county boundaries are trying to build a building, or trying to get a mortgage or a loan, whatever, to do that, and the lender's looking for some certainty that they're gonna have a funding stream both from this part of the fire district and the part that's in that county.
Sure.
So that's what needs to get resolved, but I think that's a good idea.
If they come to
Have them come talk to us about it.
me and the rest of the commissioners and they present information like you just described, I think I could easily go along with it. Reclassifications and new positions. I think I've been fairly consistent with that one, saying why are we gonna do a salary study if we're gonna try to do it ourselves piecemeal? Minimum accepted balance for this budget, obviously 25%. Property tax being increased, they are, but they're not. This budget has a several cent property tax increase embedded, but we're not actually gonna change the property tax rate based on what I've heard from the other commissioners. And this next budget, based on what I'm seeing with this, one should be very interesting. I have something about the opioid crisis. I don't want to take a lot of the board's time. I know we need to get something done for various reasons. But I'd like to see a new position in the county report to the county manager. I'd like to see it patterned after Surrey County and what they're doing. I think they have two people doing this. They have a person who coordinates the opioid effort within the county. They have a very nice sounding title for them. And at some time, I wish our staff would get in touch with Chris up there or some of those commissioners and see how they feel that's working, because if it's working well, I would support it for our county if they feel like it's working well for theirs. SROs, we've gone around a good ways with that one. Thankfully, things seem to be working out very well, very encouraged. I know you're not supposed to say things like this in a public meeting, but that's another thank you, Lord, for me, how that worked out. That's a good one. I think Commissioner Mendenhall made a good observation on this additional item. We don't want our public, we have some skeptics out there, we have some activists, and if they find something they can grab onto, they're probably watching right now and listening. But I think if we tried to keep that 31-31, there would be some real questions. So we need to fess up and say it's now 29 county and 33% schools. Economic development, we've moved some money around, we've shaved a bunch off that budget item. I hope we can keep an open mind on that, and if our Director of Economic Development can come to us and say, look, guys, here's where some funds are needed, and he has a specific use for them, and he can convince us, I'd want to know about it, and I certainly would consider it. Parks and Recs, already mentioned that. I think maybe there's a place in that for the county, whether or not we renew the Y contract, was just very specific local example. Look at King. Y'all ready for me to shut up, aren't you?
Sure.
I just did.
Finished all that.
I just did. Oh, like Columbo. Remember how you used to be walking down the room and then it'd start again? Julia's list here, it looks good to me, and you've worked out the numbers pretty well.
I keep this list current every
Right.
year, so I know what's in there
Yeah.
and what it's specifically for, because on the resolution you do, it's not detailed like this, so I have to keep it detailed somewhere, and this is how I do it.
Nothing jumps out at me from your list. It looks good, and I give my concurrence to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate
Thank you,
your
Mr. Vice
indulgence.
Yeah, I'll keep this very brief. This sheet, I'm not gonna go line item by line item, because a lot of these things we discussed till I'm literally blue in the face. You read through a lot of these, and it speaks to our position on it already, so I'm not gonna go through all of them. I have a few questions, though, in this. One of them is positions and opioid. We've talked about the opioid crisis and what we can do. Did we fund the extra deputy? It's not in there, correct? The $42,000 and some odd dollars. All right, so that's one thing I would like for us to look at, because in talking to our sheriff, I think he wouldn't put that in there if he didn't feel there was a need for it. That's just something I would like for us to look at. The HR assistant, can you give me a little bit of background on exactly what they're gonna be doing?
They would be working closely with the Department of Labor and making sure that we are following guidelines here with our staff, our buildings, our maintenance, and making sure that the safety is a top priority. And then also working with the insurance company and making sure that we are somehow or other getting this cost down. Also, they would be working with HR department in knocking out this overtime pay that she's currently under. And ensure that they would be doing other financial responsibilities also.
All right, that's enough on that. I was just curious as to,
Probably have some more.
From what I-
Well, after you asked about it the other night, I passed out, I think, that risk manager job description, sort of, just from some other surrounding counties, just kind of giving a brief overview with that. And it is a lot more tied into OSHA, but it said a lot of the same things like he was saying from the Department of Labor
right.
that they
I just wanna make sure that,
spoke about.
as Commissioner Moore said, that we are actually looking into those and giving a pretty thorough job description, and not only a job description, but the correct job title again.
Right.
If we're trying to make sure our fines and forfeitures are not extreme, then we need to make sure that that title,
And the risk
Address it.
manager is more in line with that, with what you said the other night when I looked at that. It still lists all the same job descriptions and things as he had in the HR assistant one, but as far as calling it a risk manager is what other counties are doing that have kind of taken that recommendation.
what you utilize that person for outside of their title.
Right,
is
other duties
completely
and-
up
yeah.
to, it needs to be in the job description,
Right,
obviously,
exactly.
but we're going outside when you're talking about OSHA and things that governmental agencies outside of the county, obviously, we need to make sure that they have the correct title, so.
So we don't need to call it HR assistant.
Well, that was after he spoke about that the other night about wanting to say risk.
That's an option too, so. The, 60,000 extra for the school system for supplies, I'm certainly fine with that, especially if we're backing out the 285. I know what Commissioner Walker, his feeling is, and yeah, it is right in his assessment. We're gonna have to do it next year, but 285,000 this year versus zero, don't see the difference in that. Some of the other things that I wrote down is, so the 100,000 for the school system for their emergency, that's the $1.78 million for capital,
Yes.
right? And that has to come out of the fund, the 40 and the 42, is that correct?
Article
Article
40 and 42
42.
sales tax.
So that tax is the same as it was last year? I mean, that's what we're estimating?
That's what
Yes.
we're asking.
Okay, all right, so that answers my question as, what I was gonna ask is if we could take part of that 100 and put it in their current instead of capital so that they could utilize that for what we, but yeah, that answers that, we can't do that because of the tax. So
Caused by
that takes care of that.
statutes, that 40 and 42 can only be used for capital
Capital.
and or debt service.
Right, right, so
And I
again,
did not, excuse me, I'm sorry.
no,
I did not increase it because right now it looks like we're only going to do maybe 4% increase over last year.
Mhm.
So I was kind of afraid, because you never know when it might drop back.
right,
You know, it fluctuates from year to year. Some next year it may go up higher than that, but, you know, if it does, then I'll give them more funds.
okay. So that's kind of my position on that. Again, I'm okay with doing the 60,000. I've said the other night that I certainly want to do the DSS workers, so. And the 1.78 on capital, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Commissioner Johnson, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
See if your thinking is similar to mine, or my thinking similar to yours, whichever fits best. I'm looking at the DSS workers as an initiative, approving them as an initiative on the part of this board to help address the opioid crisis, because I think some of their work would be dealing with situations that are created by the drug crisis we're facing. Is that how you're seeing it?
Oh, certainly. I think it'll be utilized for such. I mean, there'll be other things, I'm sure, but I think that it's gonna give you another window, so to speak, into what's really going on in the school system and in, regretfully, some of the homes in our county, so. Capital projects, I was looking at the list that you put out, Julia, and we keep talking about the, green box sites, right? So in the green box sites, I just want to make sure I'm reading this right, because we had talked at our last meeting about only doing one of the two.
Yeah, and I didn't change that, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just didn't know funding wise if we were looking
I
at both or
apologize,
just.
I didn't change.
No, I just wanted to make sure, that's the reason I asked you earlier, I said
Yeah.
minus the vehicle, because I put those
And I only
numbers
put
in.
3, what did I say?
Can you do it, you know?
Let me scroll over here to the spreadsheet. I only put in the budget here, I got 300,382. So yeah, I need to change that on that sheet.
Okay.
I've got so many papers everywhere, getting all.
Same.
So $300,382?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir. 300,382. And I need to take it off the fuel depot. I see I didn't take it off either.
Yeah. That was gonna be my next question, so.
Yeah.
But you didn't figure that,
out.
you didn't figure that funding into the number,
No,
though, right?
no.
Okay, all right,
On the capital project budget, I did not.
okay.
So is it, what did we do, make it half of the seven stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Less the trust.
And put that one, it was 170 for that roll-off truck in the, where that shifted over.
Yeah, I put the roll-off truck in solid waste budget to be financed.
Okay.
In the public buildings budget, I'm good with everything with the exception of demolition of the prison camp. Just, again, I don't feel like we need to spend that $120,000 this year. I understand everyone's position about trying to dress up the area, but in a budget that we're looking at, I'm totally doing that, so.
The prison,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, everybody's pretty,
Take it out.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to make a lot of these
No,
changes as
you're
we're
fine,
talking.
you're
so-
fine. I'm just trying to read
Me
through.
too, that's the only way
Yeah.
to get to a.
Trying to read through some of the open items that you don't have a complete consensus on. County fees, the schedule there, I look to our, each department head to kind of bring us that, that's something I think that we certainly can continue to look into, and I think we need to. I don't know that we necessarily have to do it during this budget session, we can kind of prepare for it for next year.
Probably need it worse next year.
Right. 16, you already have a consensus from the board on that one. Election rate, we've already kicked that one down the road, we know where we're at there. Occupancy tax, yeah, I'm certainly in favor of occupancy tax. I think that we can proceed with that to figure out, I guess we need to start putting that together.
We are.
Looking into it.
Librarians, I said the other night, I mean, at 20,000, I'm okay with doing that. That's really the only adjustment, outside of the natural resources and the veteran service that would entertain.
Okay.
The rest, I just feel like we'll let the salary study sort it out.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Our salary study, I doubt if it covers people like librarians, would it?
They had their own.
Yeah, their own
That's what I
study.
mean, so we would not, this doesn't have any impact one way or the other on our salary study we're doing. They evaluate, they do their own studies.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm just to read through if I missed anything real quick. Shannon, help me out. Is there anything else that you need clarification
Let's
on?
see, I think you've got, you're pretty much the salary study on the department head shifting, like the, grade classes, you're lumping that into, right, with the salary study, right?
Yes.
Except for, I know you said natural resources and veterans, library, okay, there. I think you got it all, I don't. 'Cause I pretty
And I've
much
already
have
spoke to the
there.
way we list our split as far as general.
Yeah, everybody was- yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What else can we do for the opioid? Again, I keep going back to that deputy that the sheriff had asked for, and I think that's something that we all should look into and make a decision on.
There's a question regarding that position, and I think Julia might be best equipped to answer this. Julia, we staffed a couple of extra positions for our sheriff's department within the past year or two, and I was thinking, to help deal with all they're having to do with the drug situation. Can you help me with that?
Sheriff's Department?
I was thinking we did.
I would, if I may, we approved a liaison position for
DSS.
Yes, yes,
which,
yeah. One of the pyramid.
Department of
Yeah.
Services.
And then
I remember
EMS is.
very, very succinctly that I approved that position because at the last Stokes Partnership Children meeting, I know we passed it on to all the board, they were very thankful for that position.
Right.
They asked me to pass it on to all of y'all, and how much they appreciated us passing that liaison position because in fact, she was here at our last meeting.
Let me just mention, I mean, the reason I bring it up is I intentionally called just to ask because I was pretty certain that we didn't have it in the budget. So I called to talk with Sheriff Marshall last night, and he said since the last deputy was added, he said that his calls had increased by about 5,000, the number of calls that they're responding to. So,
Well, I can sum it up this way. I'm very reluctant to say no to a request from a sheriff. He has a good history. He takes a very conservative approach with his staffing. The only complication for me, Commissioner Johnson, I want consistency. And as much as I'd like to say yes to all these requests for new positions and all the reclassifications, I don't want to contaminate our study we'll be doing to see how our staffing is compared to their recommendations. I want to say yes to this one and a lot of them, but I also want consistency, if that sounds reasonable.
My comment is on it, I thought it was in there, so I definitely support the sheriff thing. So I asked him one of the things, opioids aside, what could we do to reduce the stealing around here? And that would certainly be a
I
step
remember you saying
in
that.
the right direction, so I would definitely support that deputy position.
Probably 80% of the stealing is drug-driven.
Yeah, I think the ones, most of the positions we've got in here are not, you know, I don't think there's a problem with the salary study overruling them or anything. We're so short to start with.
They're
But this
situated,
organization's needed to be the right size for a long time, and it hasn't been, it's been way understaffed. And that's, we're gonna find a whole lot more than this when the salary study.
absolutely. I think most of our county staff is understaffed, and we have a reputation, I think, Julia, in the area as being having a lean staff. Had it for years. And the question becomes, Commissioner Morris and Commissioner Yance, if we pull out one or two or three or whatever and give them more urgent attention, what's that gonna do for the other employees who say, wait a minute, now, my position, my request for additional staff is important also, and I was ignored.
They weren't ignored, they were evaluated, and these were considered
Or
to be the priority.
their request was deferred, I'll change words.
Yeah, they were evaluated by both Jake and us, and we've determined these are the ones that are most important, whatever list we agreed to here. And
One
that
other
they need to be
thing-
done now instead of later.
About that deputy too, is when that transportation bill is through, like in October, that Melissa was speaking about, what they have to do. Is that include, that doesn't do any,
That's the bailiff transport in the jail.
so does that take care of that, if he has to do all that mandatory
Yeah, that's why he says he
transportation?
needs that position.
Okay, I was thinking that had something to do
The
with the deputy too.
position is a different position.
Okay.
Yeah, if I were y'all, I'd outvote me on this one.
Oh, I am. My intent is, no doubt.
So do I need to, I
Put
know
that
you're
deputy.
trying to, stuff y'all are kind of saying yes to, I'm trying to plug it in.
That's the whole key for me, is I want it plugged
So
in
I can
to where
tell
I
y'all
know
the
where
big-
we're sitting at
Yeah.
before we take.
And you're not
it.
waiting for me to go run and do it, that's the reason I'm sitting here up here calculating, if you hear me, and,
Sounds like from the board, go ahead and plug it in.
okay.
So you put the deputy back in,
At this point, I want. to plug
Yeah.
it
You do?
in. I do, but I wanna see how all this,
Okay.
you'll be able to run the numbers here in just.
Well,
two minutes.
I'll have numbers as soon as I plug this in, unless you change something
Well,
else.
that's what I want to see.
And I'd like to have a human resource assistant taken out too at some point, see what that impact is.
What about the other,
I think those duties should be
I'm
part of the
doing
assistant county manager job description or the fire marshal or some combination.
Same thing with me on that one as I am with the deputy, I'm waiting to see the final numbers before I make a decision.
So do I need to take it out or leave it in, or what?
I'd leave it in for now. I mean, I'm okay with looking at it, but that,
Well, both of those are
I
going to
just-
depend on what we do.
Exactly.
It's just the deputy's not in here, so, you know,
we need to put it
You
in.
Yeah,
put it in,
that's what
and then if
yeah.
we need to, we can take it out.
I gotta find my sheet now.
Everybody ready with mine? It's gonna take about 2 minutes. Sounds like I got about all my answers.
Commissioner Yance finished? He
Oh,
didn't-
I'm done. That's as long as I asked Shannon if there's anything she can think of that I missed, so. Shannon, we're good?
I think so, because that pretty much clarified it there, so if we can,
Sure, and I want to hear it.
All right. I'll go through really quick.
Got a lot of notes.
Yeah. Well, number one, like I said earlier, take none out this year. I'll put none into it this year, I'm sorry. Number three, go as is. Do I need to explain which one is, or can y'all look at your papers as I go down?
Y'all look at the paper.
Okay.
Y'all know Shannon's list, you good using Shannon's list?
Yeah,
you sent out today?
to do,
Which one you on?
balance level. Yeah, I just did go as is. Skip down, because it looks like we've all pretty much got the same thing. On number 6, I said that tonight, 4%. Number 7, leaving that generator out for right now.
I can't hear.
Do what?
I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
on number 7,
George.
leaving the generator out.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
On number 6, I did say 4%, as I stated the other night.
Okay.
Did you need anything from ones before that?
Give me, 5. Are you okay with the 60,
yes.
the additional 60?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I couldn't hear. Okay. All right. Okay.
Number 8, wait for the salary study. Number 9, yes, go ahead with it.
On number 8, on the salary study, wait for that, except for, are you in favor of that, adding that deputy position back in? that
Yes,
we were-
except the deputy
except-
position, I'm
okay.
sorry.
And the ones that have to be like the bailiff and all, okay.
Right, correct.
I just want to make sure about that one, okay. Okay,
Number 11, yeah, I believe they are. 12, I pretty much agree with what the rest of the board has said, everything but the jail. And we got Commissioner Walker come to do some community work on that, so.
Oh, bring your equipment.
Number 13, I still stand that is a high priority. On number 15, I had to agree with Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Yachts on that, talking to the department heads. Number 16, as I said before, yes on that. 17, yes, 97.52. Number 18, of course, yes. 19, yes. Drop down to 23. I would like to go up there and increase that they requested. Number 24, I'm open on it. Just need more info. As Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Morris said, just get with the fire commission, get them come and talk to us. Number 25, once again on the salary study. I believe on the rest of this we've already discussed on everything else. And of course, as Commissioner Mendenhall said, posting a true rate, $29.33.
okay.
Was that quick enough?
Good job.
A little, yeah. Coming from the probably should. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah.
Julia, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I know you're crunching numbers. So what are we gonna have left in the 4-cent, fund balance? Is it 2.9 million roughly? Does that sound right?
Yeah, something
You don't
like
have to look it up, I'm just looking for round numbers.
Something like that.
Okay.
Ask a question along with Commissioner Johnson's.
Yes, sir.
How much a year comes out of that in a normal year for debt service, whatever, maintenance, pumper springs, everything's in there? What's the amount that comes out a year? If we have 2.9, how much is coming out this year?
This year we are taking. Let me make sure I'm on the right line here. 2,658,536.
That will be left in, or?
That's how much
what's coming out
how
of
much
this
is coming in.
Out.
Yeah.
So that leaves roughly
That leaves us
300,000 total
300,000.
in that fund. If we got 2.9, 2.6 is coming out, just
We got, hang on one second.
roughly.
Got more revenues going in.
And more will be going in,
Yeah.
exactly.
We got revenue going in and,
So really, you really don't ever know that until the audit is done.
yes,
Right.
correct.
I think we've got a run, don't we have a run that shows if we don't put it in this year, we're not ever gonna go into the negative? I think that's
Somewhere I
what,
have one.
that's our objective,
I think
just
it was
to
here,
not
right?
go in the negative with it.
It wouldn't be sustainable in the negative.
And if you end up doing a major project out of the 4 cent fund, you're gonna put, financing funding stream into it, so then it takes on a whole new.
The model that Andrew ran that put you in the red was the one, if you didn't put it in at all, that it would be by like 23, 24 budget, that it would be
That's when
in
it
the
would
red,
run out.
if you didn't put anything in there.
I have estimated that to be about, maybe in the June 30th of this year, be about $4,053,000, the fund balance. Now, that's an estimate, but.
$4,053,000.
For the 4 cent fund?
Yeah, the 2.9 is probably what's gonna be left after, after you.
It has a fund balance, yes.
So after everything's done for this year.
Well, that's
you're-
not taking out the something we gotta do for
Right,
debt, that's
right.
just, I'm thinking at the end of the fiscal year we're in right now.
Okay.
I have one question before I forget it. So Commissioner Morris had mentioned about the process and assistant 3s that weren't reclassified in social services, and the health department ones were, they were 3s to 4s, and there's 4 of those there. Are you, the rest of you leaving that to the salary study, or is anybody else thought about those?
I am, even though that seems like what's it, people call it no-brainer. I want to be consistent and among our departments, and if we're gonna put some of them off to the side, everybody who asks for a reclassification or a new position, I guarantee you, has a basis to justify it on. I think they have a pretty strong case, I'll agree, but everybody would have a case for their request.
And I agree with.
Okay,
Commissioner Walker.
I understand. I was just making sure since that was mentioned. Okay.
And I agree with Commissioner
The
Walker.
the only reason I picked that one out of all of them is for just what you said, consistency. And we're inconsistent at the moment on that
Yeah.
particular recommendation. We have one department that's being treated exactly different from the other one. People doing the same job and
I don't-
different job descriptions.
I don't know whether this is a case of 2 wrongs make a right or not, but we did that to ourselves. And we weren't paying attention. We also staffed 4 extra positions, not 4 extra positions, but added 4 or 5 positions in DSS. We hadn't added them for anybody else, which we jumped the gun on that one also.
What you got
I don't think we jumped the gun on it, but,
You know,
I mean,
hard
it's just the
to study.
consistency, the only reason I brought it up, otherwise I would
Oh, okay.
recommend the other ones.
About adding the,
I was gonna tell you, yeah, we're transferring money to debt service of $2 million, but we're only having to use $1,490,127 of the 4 cent school/FTech fund balance.
So it
So
is,
see, that's still only about 3 and something on there.
so it's replenishing
Yeah.
itself somewhat as it goes
I'm
along.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's good
I was just
information.
trying to Answer the question about the 4 cent.
And may I add a thought about that? I've been sitting around thinking about this budget some and my involvement with it and somewhat over the years also. I think Commissioner Morris and others, I've always referred to this as the school fund. The 4 cent taxes was the school fund. I didn't break it down to SciTech and this and that fund. It was, when I would talk to people about it, it's always been the school fund, which I think it still is.
Yeah, I think it is too.
I mean, if you want me to call it school fund, that's
That's
fine.
what I've been
I just
calling
need
it.
clarification.
That's what I've always called
Because
it
it
when I,
started out as the dedicated fund, because
Yeah.
that's kind of what Doug called it.
Which one we call it?
That's the reason I worded it that way, and then it said, the school/F-Tech fund, because it included the community college. So if I need to change it, just say school fund, that's fine,
our school capital fund, I think Commissioner Morris
that's fine.
mentioned.
I need to change it to school capital fund.
Well, I would, if that's what you're gonna change it to, that's fine, but I would prefer that it has something about for SciTech in there.
Okay.
Because I think that's when you start talking about being transparent and you wanna be transparent, you have to put something about that. A lot of people, when you say school, they're gonna think Stokes County Schools.
School system.
There's still a lot of people that get that tax bill and have no clue that anything with for SciTech comes out of that 4 cent.
And
even though it says it, I mean,
Yeah.
there's still people that don't realize that. So to be transparent, I think it needs to
Sure.
have something
Okay, good
referencing.
observation.
Yeah, for site
Agreed.
tech.
And that's what we had it named, didn't we?
Yeah.
School and for science tech, why don't we just leave it
Well,
there?
so I just wanted clarification on what you really wanted it called.
Yeah.
I never thought of a reason to change this stuff. It's our tech is in there, right?
Yes. The community college for the early college and the community college is coming out of that.
That's right. Yeah. Sit in the trustees meeting for Saturday. Sure, name vacancies.
Anything to any of those. I think the sheriff, well, the public building,
Mhm.
and took it out up here. Recreation, grounds,
It's like you don't need a classification study to tell you that you got one department with.
position plus the force.
They're doing the same thing.
Yes, and doesn't do anything.
What's the cost?
I'm not done anything else to anybody except dedicated fund, I took the 280 out. And that's current expense, I put the 60 in.
Mr. Morris, you got it all figured out?
I took the 120 out, for that, 911.
Give me a blank check, I'm going home, I'll finish it off.
And the capital.
Talk to Julia. Julia has a checkbook, see what you can do with her.
I just let, I had changed that one, and then I didn't change anything else. You agree that that's it? Okay. Any more questions or any more changes?
Yeah, what we sitting at?
Or you want the
Go
figure
ahead.
we're sitting at?
That's complete. Finished.
At this moment, we're doing what, which is, I'll just go through it, just taking out, way the 280,000 for dedicated fund. Adding 60,000 to the school for supplies. Adding the deputy sheriff, taking the demolition of prison camp out, which, what that does, that goes over the capital reserve and puts it back in the cap, leaving it in the capital reserve account. And I think that's everything in it.
Adding the deputy.
We add the
She got it.
deputy, yeah, we got that.
She got it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so, I will just make sure everyone, this is how I've done property tax rates. 28.8 is general fund. 33.2 is school. That makes, I had to add a little bit, I had to take away a couple thousand from their penalties and interest to make it balanced, because Jake told me I couldn't use but one decimal for tax office, so I had to kind of reduce that a little bit, but that makes the total right.
Okay.
So just let y'all know that. I've got $182,640 that I can take away from fund balance and not appropriate, with that being done.
Say that again.
182,640.
You know, which will make the fund balance, I mean.
That's a surplus, you mean?
Yes.
You need, you might go right, you go over this again, Commissioner Walker.
So that'll make,
I don't want Commissioner Walker
That's-
coming in
yeah.
here and saying he did not hear this,
Yeah.
and then, being asked to vote on it. I want acknowledgement.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, in other words, hold that thought, Jimmy goes back.
That's right.
I appreciate you.
But you guys, be honest,
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
very kind.
Yeah, we're.
We already
want
voted.
you to sit down and hear the numbers.
We're done.
Yep. Just gotta wait for you before we can adjourn.
I knew you could do it.
Let's see.
You're in good hands.
Oh, you're not getting out of
You're
this
not
one.
getting out of the vote.
Mr. Mendenhall's done
No.
decided, you're not getting out of this one.
Commissioner Walker, you're not getting out of the vote on this. You're gonna vote with us now.
I'm gonna vote.
Now, where are you going?
I'm going to the same place he just did.
Do we need to take a break for a minute?
Yeah, let's just recess for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's just do that.
good. Now get a little bit stressed.
Y'all are killing me.
I
Killing me.
thought we'd get ready to vote. Dang, on every
That's
minute
what I
of
thought.
that
I mean,
story.
this is like watching them,
I'm
it's like watching one of those movies.
Y'all realize
those
we're right
good
here at the
movies,
end.
and-
We're here.
I was
I'm done. I've got
Well,
you.
it depends on what the motion is.
Yeah.
You keep trying to slide that, your little,
Clause that's in it,
that's not gonna fly.
you want me to show you where it is?
It's not gonna fly.
You want me to show you where it is? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hidden very well.
Is it like the Santa Claus in the movie? Santa Claus, the Claus.
I've got crazy.
Yeah, what?
When I changed the tax figure, it's using it in the recommended, so I gotta fix that column. But that's.
I'm gonna put my food aside and get back to business.
Okay, you're good.
Call the meeting back in order, and I would ask Miss Julie if she would repeat what she said earlier.
At this time, we are taking away the $285,000 from the 4-cent fund. We're not gonna transfer that. We're adding $60,000 to the school, school supplies. We're adding the deputy sheriff. We're taking away the demolition from prison camp, which reduces our transfer from capital reserve.
Everything, wasn't it?
I'm trying to scroll through and see what I see.
I'd like for you to repeat.
Okay, we're not transferring the $285,000 to the school/Tech fund, 4 cents. We're gonna add $60,000 to the school for supplies. Having the deputy sheriff.
Mhm.
We're taking away the demolition, $120,000 from public building with demolition at the prison camp, which is being transferred from capital reserve, which changes that budget. And I think that's it.
The deputy,
Huh?
42 and some change. The deputy, 42, around 42,000 for the deputy.
You want your exact number?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, I'm
no, I just need a
It
round
was
number.
42 something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So, making sure I've got what you got. Not transferring the 285,000 to the.
Right. Zero of
That-
that one. Mhm.
That's
Commissioner
what.
Young,
yeah.
the 42 was the record clerk. The actual deputy is 47,
Deputy was
47,000.
47,000.
So add 47, okay.
At 9, excuse me.
So, not transferring the 285,
Okay.
we're adding 60,000 to school supplies. We're adding the deputy, which was 47,957. Taking away the demolition of the old prison camp, which was 120,
Yes.
Mhm.
120,000.
Mhm.
All right, now, do you have, let's say, can you tell me right now, doing that, what are, and I want, on record, whoever makes the final motion, no property tax increase, no property tax increase,
Right.
and I wanna know, whoever makes the motion, what the fund balance is.
Okay.
You should be able to get that now.
I've got that, I've got
What is it?
4,093, 376.
4
4,000
million.
or 4 million?
4 million.
I give 4,093, 376.
If it's 4,000, everybody can.
So 4,093,376, and so our fund balance will be
25.46.
25.46%.
And what will the budget be, do you? What,
Our total budget, what would it be?
With the school system,
yeah,
Just because you always add it, like we usually have 49, 48, 49, 50, somewhere in that area. What is our total?
Let me scroll over here to it. Sorry, I have to, I've got all these spreadsheets all in one thing, so.
I just don't want somebody looking me in the eye and asking me what the budget is, and I can't tell.
I just wanna make sure my big 13,183,303. $53,068,636.
53.
$53,068,636.
$68,636.
Yes.
So we cut an additional $1 million off of it tonight.
Excuse me?
So we cut roughly an additional $1 million off of it tonight.
What was
From
it?
what we started tonight, 54,075.
54,675.
Last year was about 49.
It was 49,268,207.
Okay.
49.1.
268.
49,268,207.
That was last year.
That's 1819.
I should say the school was.
She didn't break it down just now, the total.
How much is schools? How much is school?
He wants just the figure, like break the school out of that figure is what he's asking.
Capital was $1,780,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
What the current one is exactly.
The current number is,
Give me the total amount of the budget again, please. The total amount of our budget.
53,000,000.
68,000.
53,068,636.
53,068,636.
And it was 54,675.
When we started tonight.
Yeah,
I didn't write that figure down.
that's what I had written down that she had told him.
I didn't write that figure down.
Last year it was 49,268,207.
207, 260.
49,268,207.
We cut $1.5 million out just tonight. I didn't realize we cut that much out.
54,165,994 was what was before we did the changes.
Tonight.
54,165,994.
165.
I didn't add the 90,000 for the Poplar Springs, and I did.
About
the others.
1.1 million.
So you're, it's a little over.
That was before
Yeah, a little over.
Virgin
A little over
Lord.
$1 million. He was just asking about the breakout for the school, like, I know the $1,780,000, but the other number, he was just trying to break that number out of the.
The current,
out of
final
the-
current expense
Oh,
number
okay.
for the school system.
Okay, it's 13,183,303, that includes Poplar Springs.
Is that what's making it go up?
Yeah,
A little bit, okay.
because we added 60,000.
We added to 60,000.
And Poplar Springs.
I was wondering what was making it go to the 183.
Yeah.
So it's pop, okay, I'm happy.
The
I
the
understand.
regular, not counting Poplar Springs, is 13,093,003.
That's the number I was at.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
With adding the 60, so the 90 is what makes that happen.
13,093,003.
Okay, all right.
That was without Poplar.
That's without Poplar Springs.
Adding Poplar Springs is what
That's
makes
where it
it
was coming from.
13,183.
Oh, it was $90,300 for Poplar Springs. Okay, now, we, at this moment with the changes, we will be using 9,093,376 fund balance. That would be 25.46%.
It's million.
What's,
Million, yeah, not million.
She's in her,
4
she's in
million.
the, It's,
$4,093,376.
What are you looking at that's 9,000? You got something over there that's.
Poor Julie, been a long day.
It's yesterday, today, yeah.
I understand.
So if.
$4,093,376, I just wanna make that clear.
So if this budget is approved, what you just read off, our fund balance that would be in proposal would be 25.46%.
Yes, sir.
Our total budget would be $53,068,636.
Yes.
And there'll be no property tax.
No.
Julie? It's not too much trouble. Can you tell me exactly what the balance would be left in the fund balance?
13,178,046. Now, that's an estimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. 13,178,046.
And of course, you won't know exactly until you get all of it. 13,178,046 is your estimate.
You can multiply 58,068 by 25.46, and that should give it to you.
Yep.
Right to you.
It's actually not coming up. That's what I was trying to do, and it's a little bit. Pretty close.
Anybody making the motion?
I make a motion for the 1920 fiscal year budget to come out to have a total budget of $53,068,636, which will leave us, do you need anything else? Do you need the fund balance?
62 cents tax rate.
And a 62-cent tax rate. Do you want the 29.33 in there, or you want that left out?
The 28.8 and the 33.2, that's,
I don't
That's
know if
okay.
you wanna say what it's split up or not.
I'm asking.
You want it split, tell them what the split up is.
Yeah, all the board is fine with that.
mhm.
All the board wants that, so you would
You had 28.8 and 33.2.
create a tax rate that would reflect the current appropriation of tax dollars to each fund, the school and the general.
General fund is 28.8.
So we have
And 33.2.
created a tax rate, which will indicate
28.8.
General fund.
0.8 for the general fund,
That's
and
33.2 school. current expense.
33.2 for the school
Current expense.
current expense. Do I need to add anything else?
You said you wanted the fund balance percentage in there and that there was no tax increase. 'Cause you said that with the motion that you,
There will be no property tax increase listening, have I left anything out? This is proposal that I'm proposing. Motion I'm making.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Julia, make sure that, I mean, I've got it all on
Yes.
Okay.
I knew.
He's,
and you
Commissioner Young, second. Can you say everything you just said?
Yeah, everything he just said.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
I don't have any showstoppers with the proposed budget. I would like to go on the record officially saying that I'm definitely against the human resource assistant position being included. And I'm really not happy with the process and assistant force being different in one department and another. To me, that's something that we really don't need to wait for a salary study on. I would have liked to looked at some department head comparisons. I think we've got some folks that are really out of whack there, but salary study will address that. And then one other thing, we know the assessment of the buildings is gonna cost at least twice as much as what we projected, so
It's 45,000 in there now.
35, right?
I saw 45.
35 is what Peterson,
Yeah.
when we just did the county buildings.
I know I
He's
saw
gonna
that
get
on
back
some
to you
of that.
on the cost of adding the schools.
I mean, if we know it's gonna cost more, I'm not sure why we don't budget more, but we could also fix that with a budget amendment later, so whenever we get another quote from Perry or whatever, so.
Commissioner Morris, excuse me, I'm sorry. I was wrong, I was looking at the salary
Salary study.
study for 45. Sorry.
So with those comments, that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris. Any other comments?
Well, interesting situation. I agree with a whole bunch of what's in this budget, a lot of things I really like about it. But I feel like I need to represent the conservative element in our county, and we're looking at basically an 8% increase from last year. And that's on top of an 8% increase 2 years ago. And I just think that's a little heavy. We're trying to do a lot, and to me, we're doing a little bit too much too fast. I won't go into any more detail than that. I think that's probably sufficient.
Have a motion, second. Is there any more comments?
One more comment.
Yes, sir.
Just in reference to what Commissioner Walker said, I agree the number's up a little bit, but I would remind him and the board that average counties like Stokes, latest LGC report was they are averaging about $60 million in their budgets. And we're up to 53, so we're at the very low end of what, still at the very low end of what similar counties are doing. And so therefore, the increase doesn't alarm me very much.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Follow up to Commissioner Morris's statement. One aspect of that comparison, Commissioner Morris, I would be interested in, is how their revenue stream compares to our counties. We're basically a residential county. We don't have the benefit of having a large commercial and business base. Wish we did, but I think that would have some impact on the size of the budget for some of the comparable sized counties. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I believe we're
One
working on
comment
that.
back to that.
Yes, sir.
We're having a good time.
Shannon, you got what you wished for.
I agree, that's a good point, but at the same time, we're under the same statutes and required to provide the same services that similar counties are doing. So to me, that's all I need to say. I could preach an hour on this budget and several previous ones. But I won't do that.
Only thing I'm gonna say is response to both of them, I believe we're actually on the right track to start building this county a little bit more and more economic to be able to have stuff coming in to help us out with this in the future. So I believe we're on the right track for it. And I feel confident what we've done here last couple of weeks, so. Motion and second, any more comments?
I want to follow up one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
Nothing to what they said as far as following up to the Dillon just have, but anyway. So the budget, you mentioned that you can't support everything in the budget, and let me say that neither can I support everything in here. And as a public servant for 9 years, I don't think there's ever been a budget that I supported everything in here, or in that budget, particular budget that was presented. But I obviously support this budget as a whole. There's things that, I think the five of us, there's no way we're all gonna agree on everything that's in this book. If we do, it's gonna be few and far between that happens. So I just wanna make that statement that I agree with you. I concur with what your statement is, but for the most part, I support the budget as a whole. So looking at it as a whole.
I think this is my 25th one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I have to say anything because I made the motion.
You can have discussion.
No, I'm not, I'm ready for the vote.
Okay,
You got a motion and a second, don't you?
yeah, any more comments? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. No surprises.
All right, with that,
The last budget that I voted on that had an 8% increase, I also voted no. That was what, 16, 17, Judy? I think so.
all right, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. What?
I had some discussion.
Oh, yeah, you did?
On the
All in favor
adjournment.
say aye. Meeting adjourned.
Don't step in my-
The 24th, are we gonna do it on the, or can we do it that night?
Yeah.
Which night?
The 24th
I'm gonna be here.
is the regular meeting.
I'm at the regular meeting, that's, that's
Yeah.
the Monday?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Monday,
you
I
said
will
you-
be here for that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had that written down that you were here.
Everybody will be here on the 24th.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.